Oh my God, I'm live. Here's the notebook. Hey, thank you for joining wherever you are. I'd be thrilled to hear where you're tuning in from and what you're hearing in the news. There's so much going on as usual. Today, I'm not going to give you as much of what's happening in the day to day of the news, but tell you actually an interview that I just had today with a former hostage, an Israeli who was kidnapped along with his family from one of the southern kibbutzes near the Gaza border, and he told me his story, and I mean in detail. So lots to talk about. I mean, it it was like an hour and a half sit down interview, but it was even beyond that, like talking to him before and after. And I'm telling you, it's like, oh my gosh, look at this, just from my notes, which, and that's not even counting the, I have a recording. Thank God I have word for word because I won't remember all the details. But hey, Laura, Brooklyn, oh my gosh, we were just talking about New York at I met a Long Islander here in Jerusalem yesterday, and now we're talking about New York, Queens, trying to explain the phenomenon of Donald Trump, being from Queens. I was like, yeah, for me, he wasn't so shocking as for most other people in the world. So anyway, but there's just a update on the news. There's still a war going on. While we were in the south on this kibbutz near the Gaza border, that we heard, and mind you, 6 miles from the border, so not one of the closer kibbutzim, but like a little bit further back. We heard booms. We heard. I want to see where it is exactly. I'm going to show you on the map. We heard booms. We heard a drone nonstop. Like at some point, like luckily we had most of the interview done, and then suddenly this drone showed up out of nowhere, and it was so loud. Like we had to stop the interview for a while, and then we're like, okay, it's not going to end. It's not going to end. So we did. I don't know. They're going to have to work some technical magic here. Let me share the map so you can see or see where this kibbutz is that we were at and its proximity to Gaza. Okay, so where are you, Orim? Here it is, right in the middle, right here. You see Orim. That's the name of the kibbutz. And, if you pan out, so here it is now, and here's Gaza. So it's across from Khan Yunis, and it seems like this is where it's all going down right now in terms of the Israeli military and what's happening. So the war is just full on right now. There's reservists being called up. There's they're building a new corridor uh, across the Gaza Strip so they can further, cut off and divide. So the strip is now in three sections. I think three. It's becoming three. But they're building this third, the Morag corridor, and it's basically like isolating each section of the Gaza Strip into this smaller, isolated area, which then you would have to do like the first crossing they made, Netzarim, is I heard it's like 3 miles in its length, like to get across. So the Israeli military is like going to control these corridors, and then the north south traffic is impossible. I guess it's part of this operation. They call the operation Gideon's Chariots, and actually, the funny thing is the Gazans on social media were showing some Hamas is like vehicles or whatever, and they called it the Hamas tuk-tuks. Tuk-tuk is like this small little cart or something. So they were comparing it because like many of the Gazans are just fed up with Hamas, but they're but so what I was saying about the military operation, it looks like they're isolating these sections. And then, for instance, that what was happening in Khan Yunis in the last couple days, like serious bombings, many injured, many killed, dozens, if not now, just in, I think each week you're talking hundreds killed, dozens a day. And I heard a report from a surgeon in a hospital there who said that they operated in one day on three members of a family, two young girls, I think like 7 years old and younger, and their mother, and with severe injuries, burns, loss of limbs. She said the mother's probably not going to survive. So there is some. Wait, this guy's talking now. Here, this is the head, the chief of staff of the army.
חיסלנו את בחיריו, השמדנו תשתיות קריטיות, פגענו באלפי מחבלים, והנחתנו מהלומות כואבות על אויבינו בזירות נוספות.
Okay, so they're talking about like isolating Hamas and destroying their assets and assassinating some. And now, interestingly enough, so the army's saying that their goal is the return of the hostages and and defeat of Hamas. The government is constantly saying the defeat of Hamas and the return of the hostages as second. So there's a lot of even internal conflict, and so that's one of the things I want to talk about as well, is that there's this internal conflict in the country. Hi, Daniel. Which I was going to tell. There's a poll that came out today from what does JPPI stand for? Jewish People Policy Institute, I think, where they said that 64% of Israelis believe that total victory is unachievable. The Jewish People Policy Institute. I did get that right. Okay, so all right, so the president of the JPPI said, as the war in Gaza enters a grinding phase, it's critical to examine public opinion regarding its goals. It turns out that while a small majority still considers total victory a worthy objective, 2/3 believe it is unattainable. Particularly troubling is the finding that nearly half of Israelis think the prolongation of the war is tied to coalition political interests. These insights reflect the views of the very citizens who are sending their children into battle. Is the government listening? So here, Raya's in the house, guys. Raya's right here now. Majority of Israelis, 55% overall, 50% of Jews believe the war will last another year or more. About a quarter say it will last a few months. Raya says, no way. Doesn't want that to happen. And let me see. All right, we'll talk about it after. Okay, and then it goes through the whole. This is very, very interesting. 44% agree the war has been prolonged due to lack of clear and realistic goals. So there's a huge divide right now in society, and I will tell. Hi, Jeanette from South Africa. Very cool. So today when I spoke with this rescued hostage, Louis Har, I asked him, I said, well, you're sitting here a couple miles from the border, and the war is, ostensibly going on to protect you. But then again, you having gone through captivity there, how do you balance these feelings of I need to be safe in my home versus what's happening there? Whether it's, you're concerned about what's happening to the hostages or you're concerned about what's happening to the Palestinians. And he said that for him, the most important thing is to not to extend the war. He said the war should end right away. He said it's more important for us to be ready, to be prepared for another round, but not to continue the war. And he said, make a deal, get the hostages out. He also said that for himself, he cannot begin to heal and to deal with his trauma and to move on unless all the hostages are out. He said, until they're out, there's still a piece of me there. And how can I rest? And actually, he's one of the released hostages that has been very active in bringing this to public light, traveling around the world and addressing audiences. And by the way, if you're from Texas, if you have any connections at churches in Texas, he's invited to speak at October 7th commemoration in Texas. He didn't know where in Texas, but with the Jewish community. But if you know of any churches, I mean, there's plenty of mega churches there that would probably want to hear his story. So let's talk about his story. Louis Har. Let me go back to October 7th. He was with family in a not at his home, but at someone else's home. His partner Clara, who was all right. So they're at their house, and it was her brother as well, brother and sister, and they're all from Argentina originally. So they're at this house, and on October 7th, um, the they're very close to the Gaza border. Excuse me, Daniel's got like a game or something running in the back. I have no idea. They were in their safe room, and hearing all the rockets and hearing. Can you put that lower, please? Hearing all the rockets and everything, and then only to find out that after that there was an infiltration. And he said, we have to. Clara said we all need to get on the ground and like huddle together, but like get as low as we can and huddle together in a corner of the room. Well, it turned out that is what saved their lives. They as soon as they got down, there was shooting, and it was like bullets were whizzing right over their heads, and then the door broke down, and then but instead of killing them, they kidnapped. There were like he said so many terrorists in the room that he couldn't believe that there were that many, and they all seemed to be in his house. In that house, they took the five of them somehow, like even though they separated two and then one, they all ended up together in Gaza. He describes going into a tunnel as soon as they got in Gaza. First of all, there were a bunch of kids with hedge clippers that were like running after their car, like threatening them, like going like this, like we're going to get you. But then, the Hamas terrorists wanted them, so they shot their gun in the air, and the kids ran away. So they went into a tunnel, and they went. He said they just kept going down into a tunnel. At some point, they were crawling because it was only like this high. He said that they were going for 3 to 4 hours straight of just going through this tunnel. And I said, well, do you know, were you going in circles, or were you going was it like from one place to another? He said, we have no idea. I think he said they came in Khan Yunis, and they somehow ended up, I don't know if it was through the tunnels or after driving in Rafah, which is in the south. So they got there, but the tunnels for 3 to 4 hours, it must have been kilometers. I mean, they were kind of running. They were barefoot. They were taking like pajamas and barefoot. And only when they were coming out of the tunnel, they were climbing these iron rungs to get out, which he said was so difficult, actually, because it wasn't a ladder. It was like just rungs in the wall. And it was only as they were as the 17-year-old girl who was with them kidnapped, as she was climbing up, and then very tediously moving something from one shoulder to the other as she climbed. At the end, she asked the person, Fernando, who was ahead of her, she said, can you take Bella? He reaches down and pulls her Shih Tzu, her dog, that she took with her. And nobody noticed until that moment, Hamas themselves saying, like, we just took a dog. And nobody knew this on the outside until she was released. Spoiler alert, about 53 days later, when she was released, and she came out with the dog still in her arms. Um, Unbelievable that that dog also survived. So eventually they were dressed in women's clothes with the hijab, with the what is it called, the niqab, taken to a house, and it was in that house that they stayed. They were guarded, and the five of them were together. They started out with, they had food. He said you could tell they were prepared. They were prepared to have us for months, possibly. There was, but it waned. The food waned um, during the time that they were there, and after about 50 days, the women were released, and they allowed the men to watch it on TV, so they saw the women being released. Um, and then it was just Luis and Fernando, and they were there at some. They said that he always had hope he was going to get out somehow, that he was going to be rescued, but it definitely got longer after that. So on day 129, he said that there was some kind of crazy firefight outside. It was like an explosion and then a lot of shooting. And he was like, "Oh my gosh, what's happening?" He said the Israeli army is gonna bomb this building, and he said, "I need to get to the stairwell under like one of the concrete pillars, so that'll be the safest place. If the building comes down, maybe I can survive." So he left the room and he started to like go through the room where the terrorists were, like to get in out of the apartment. And when he heard Fernando say, Luis, come back. And he was like, all right, he goes back. And suddenly he's like grabbed. And somebody whispers in his ear, Luis, it's the Israeli army. We're taking you home. And he was whisked out onto the balcony. They put some kind of vest on him, and they clipped something to him, and they said, all you need to do is straighten your legs. And he goes, okay. And then suddenly he's like on a zip line out into another the rendezvous point. Somebody else grabs him, and Fernando, they put him in, I think first they were maybe running, they got into a truck. Run. The truck got to an armored vehicle. Run. Singing in the rain. Good?
Not good.
You're welcome. Armored vehicle. The armored vehicle, they had a doctor. The doctor was said, okay, I'm here for you. What do you need? And then they were told, okay, from here, we're going to get in a helicopter. By the way, again, they were in pajamas and barefoot because it was 2 a.m. when this happened. And one of the soldiers actually gave him shoes. His shoes, threw them at him as he was like getting in the truck. So then it was like, all right, the helicopter, you're going to see a helicopter. It's going to land. We're going to say, go. You run to the helicopter, jump in. As soon as you jump in, it's going up. And they get in the helicopter, up it goes, and then tries to clear out of Gazan territory. And it landed at one of the hospitals. I can't remember. I wrote it down somewhere, which one. All of this happened in 1 hour and 15 minutes. From the time they were woken up to the time they were landing in the hospital, it was 1 hour and 15 minutes. And that was after 129 days of captivity. And maybe they would, maybe they would have been released in the last few rounds when it was only all the women and children except for soldiers had already been released. And they released the final, like the female soldiers and some of the remaining female captives that were in their 20s. And then they released men, elderly men that had survived until this point. And he would have probably only been released after 500 something days had he not been rescued. He was 70 when he was kidnapped. He's 72 now. And he is, yeah, so one of the things he said that was like, that he said he's now quoted on, they said, um, when he came out and he's still in his pajamas and they're running, it's winter now. It was in February that he was rescued, and they said, "Are you? Are you cold?" And he said, "No, my heart is warmed." And it sounds better in Hebrew the way he said it. But so anyway, got him to the hospital, and since then he has been he's recovered. He said there's a few lingering physical effects, and of course trauma. And from that, he is not sleeping well. And he said there's certain things that will trigger him, but it's not the same thing every time. He said, for him, he said, I have no problem hearing Arabic or meeting Arabs. He had a discussion with the cab driver, an Arab cab driver, and he was telling him about his experience and and what it was like. And he said, yeah, he's like, well, I'll tell you what happened to me. Because the guy was like, no, you're all liars, you're all exaggerating. He goes, no, I'll tell you what happened to me. And the guy, after he heard him, he was like, all right, you're honest, so that was, he also said, people after the Holocaust, they say never again. And he said, I don't like that, this sentiment. My sentiment is be prepared, be ready. And so that is how he is approaching his new life now. And he said his whole life has changed, everything's changed. And let's see. So anyway, so that's mostly his story, the condensed version. Um, let's see what else there is with this, with Trump's visit to the region. If you saw, I uploaded a video of the news update from from Friday. That'll bring you up to speed with Trump's tour of the region and what he was talking about here in terms of, like, he wants deals and peace and this and that. But Israel has continued the war, has continued their military operation, which is has expanded and is pretty massive. They're basically literally obliterating large swaths of the Gaza Strip, emptying, sterilizing, and then destroying neighborhoods in the north, especially. But now it's like the other zones. I guess when they build these corridors, the same thing's happening there. But we talked about the soldier that was released last week, the hostage who was American, and that was, of course, the right before Trump's visit. So he was an American Israeli, and the U.S. negotiated his release. So everybody is wondering now, was part of that negotiation that they would get that the U.S. promised to Hamas that there would be humanitarian aid. And so it looks like the pressure was put on Israel to end I think it was 10-week blockade on the Gaza Strip, because Israel controls what gets in and out, and there was no humanitarian aid. There have been reports of starvation. I know that the people in the right wing media, not necessarily, like to question the fact of whether or not there is starvation or hunger. but I believe at this point it's pretty much a fact that there are people starving in Gaza, and that there have been a lot of many deaths attributed to starvation. So Israel let in a couple of trucks yesterday, and today 100. So the question is, will that humanitarian aid get to the people? Because you can blame Israel for the blockade. And then also the question is, can you blame Hamas? Then will they get the supplies to the people? Because there's two layers to this. So that's the story with the humanitarian aid. Now, what is making headlines here in Israel today? The head of the very left-wing party, the Democrats. It's called the Democrats. No relation to the American party. Yair Golan said today on the radio, man, I wish I was paying more attention because I was hearing it live, that Israel was killing babies in Gaza as a hobby. And of course everybody erupted. Then what he has not walked back his statements. What he said is that he's saying the government, the politically motivated government, is celebrating the death and starvation of children, and he doubled down on that. Is this quote? I was referring solely to the most failed government in Israel's history, not to the IDF, the Israel Defense Forces. Our mission is to ensure that Israel remains a sane country that does not kill children, either as a hobby or as a policy. So, by the way, Hamas echoed his statements and applauded him for saying this, but he has doubled down on it. And then this also comes on the heels of several countries in Europe also condemning Israel for this war, and saying, okay, now it's gone too far, and it's disproportionate at this point. Now, Golan also said a government that says it is possible to abandon hostages and that children should be starved is a government that sounds like a Hamas spokesman. A government that talks about an atomic bomb in Gaza is not a Jewish government, and it is certainly not Zionist. So he is criticizing the Netanyahu-led government and the other politicians in the coalition. So Bezalel Smotrich, Itamar Ben-Gvir, a lot of the people in their party as well, in their parties, have they're pro-war. They want this war to continue, and they're part of the government. So anyway, he quotes them. He also accused them of actually, they're military evaders. They both didn't serve in the military. So anyway, this was all this big mess today that stirred up a lot of headlines. So a lot, and as you can see, like in this poll, like a lot of Israelis actually believe that, a majority of Israelis believe that the war is now politically motivated. And so anyway, there's much angst as usual. There are many protests as usual, and a lot of dissenting opinions here. Let's see. The UK is also pausing free trade with Israel. They're sanctioning some West Bank settlers that because of their calls to settle Gaza. Like, because part of the issue here is, you like, maybe from outside you just see like a military campaign, and whether or not you argue if it's justified, that's one thing. But people here are also seeing that there's this possibility well, it's not possible. It's a stated goal that many in the government, like the Smotrich and Ben Gvir parties, want to actually settle Gaza. So that's going on. The question is as well, are Gazans getting out? And I saw a number that I was unable to verify as to whether or not Gazans are actually migrating, because that was what Trump said. That is what Netanyahu has been more than happy to do. But then it seems like it's actually very difficult to get out of Gaza, if you can even get out, in the midst of these very intense bombings that are happening there. So it's a hot mess down there, and I dare say we're not all of the information from every side. So just keep reading, checking the news, and trying to find out from all different sources what's happening in Gaza. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up and say good night, good day, wherever you are. Thank you for tuning in, and check back one day. The interview with Louis Hart will be edited and ready to go on another channel, because I did it for somebody else. But anyway, I'll share it here though. So, okay. Ciao.